Mark Willie, how you doing today, brother?
Dave, that is not a virtual background. You are lighting it up. Look
It's
at
my new studio.
that.
It's like my new studio. What do you think?
I think we should have people guess. Is Dave in Italy? Is Dave in France? Is Dave in Switzerland?
Check out the
Is
roof.
Dave in Finland? Where is Dave Cooper today? Put in the comments where Dave is. He might be, well, he's on Earth. He's on this planet.
I am on Earth. I am on Earth.
But
Not always.
what country is he in? What city is he in? What province is he in?
Yeah. Listen, man. I can tell you where I am at. There's a whole lot of innovation happening, and there's a whole lot of products scattered throughout the lawn, a very important lawn here. And there he goes. Look, and that person that just commented, I got to spend some time with him earlier as well. Greg Ugaldi, my good friend and buddy here. Let me see. I can put him up. There you go. What's up, Greg? Hey, Greg. National Building
If
Museum.
anyone's going to guess accurately, it's Greg, because it's not a guess; it's an educated answer.
That's right. Hey, Nikki. We saw Nikki today too. Nikki's here. All kinds of great people.
So
listen,
Dave,
Mark,
tell us where we are. Tell us what you're doing.
right now, I am in Washington D.C. and I am inside. Did you even know this existed? A National Building Museum. A National Building Museum. I can only show you a little bit, because they said I could just film in this area here. But we are here for the Innovative Housing Showcase. And Mark, it's been unbelievable. And I will tell you why. I have had a lot of meetings with, some of the really high levels of HUD and interviews with the advisor to Marcia Fudge, the Secretary of Housing. And they're wanting to have more talks and more interviews about how we change housing. And HUD wants to play a big, big role in it. Here, I'll show you some of this. This is some of the inside of what they have. Look, timber frame walls.
This is an interesting sneak peek, Dave, because there's people on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Twitch, YouTube that are watching it. That's just on the inside of this museum. Just
This is
wait.
only one room.
Yeah. Just wait until you hear what's on the outside. 55 exhibitions on the outside, Dave. Is that right?
Yep. So listen, we got everything from 3D printed homes, right? We have Boxables here with their folding house. I'm going to turn slowly so I don't make everybody sick, show you what's in here. We have hemp products. We have clay brick products. The DOE has a bunch of stuff that's not even out yet, that they have these. It's almost like what you'd expect from the DOE, these little white tents, just inconspicuously in the corner, showcasing what they're working on, which is quite incredible. And they're all here to change housing, and it's all different levels. And what's great about it is, Mark, there's so many people here that are looking at housing differently than how we've all looked at housing. And what do I mean by that?
Well,
what I mean by that is they're taking their own path, paving their own roads, and trying to figure it out without doing the tried and true Dave Cooper and Mark way, how we used to do it all the time. They're saying, yep, nope, we're going to do this different. We're trying to do it different, and that's what they're doing. And right now, where I'm at here, I'm hanging out with our friends at the International Code Council. Now, that's never a really good topic with the builders in the world, right? Oh, the code people and this and that. But there's going to be some exciting stuff that we'll have to talk about, Mark, because with the International Code Council, they are opening their doors to bring builders in, bring offsite manufacturers in to help look at how we can make the codes better, more energy efficient, more sustainable, ESG, the whole 9 yards. So it's funny when you start peeling the onion back, what you learn versus what you just see on the news or read in the paper or what people say. And I really got to peel the onion back. I got to meet with the assistant press secretary for HUD, and we spent some time together. And I had dinner last night with Dan Hardcastle, who is the person right below Marcia Fudge. And I really started to understand the inner workings of what they're dealing with. So we'll break this all down and share it with you on one of our next shows. There's too much to go through, but I'm starting to understand politics.
It's an important rollout. So Dave's at the foundation part where the culmination of everyone gets together for the International Code Council.
Yep.
And every 3 years, we're given an update. So we get along the way to contribute to that update, to give our inputs, and then each municipality adopts all of it or a percentage of it as they feel their local market is ready. And look behind you. What is that, Dave?
That is the International Code Council's banner, and they have a main focus. Can you read it?
Off-site construction solutions for today's challenges. And like your face should be on that thing. Like it's brilliant.
I
Brilliant.
should put. I mean, look at this. We're talking. I'm with the third-party inspectors here. We've been doing interviews and talking to everybody. And I said, "Oh, you're the NTA or the PSF," and always sending my plans back, and I can't compete with site builders. And you know what? He had answers for me. He's like, "I'm sorry."
Ask the right questions, get the right answers.
Yeah. I'll give you guys a little sneak peek into the room here. There's all kinds of classes, education. Ken Semler's here. Tim Sims is here. Let's see here, show. Hold on.
Yeah, I was very surprised. Come on, lady. Own it.
Look at that. So for all the folks, Dave, that aren't able to be in DC, you're bringing the Innovative Housing Showcase to them on this beautiful Friday morning. It's amazing.
It is amazing. In fact, with the ICC, NTA, we got HUD here, the National Association of Home Builders is here. And they're all working in collaboration to pull off these different events and all the different things that are going on. This is the summit from the ICC, and they're really trying to get some standards put together for offsite construction to make it easier for people to do what they need to do. And I've also learned, and I didn't know this, NTA, the third-party inspection company for our industry, also is a research lab. And they help do that. So if you have new and exciting products out there and you're trying to get approvals on it, they can help you with it. And these are all things I didn't know. And I've been in this industry a long time. I always thought NTA was separate, but they're actually part of ICC.
It's brilliant. It's brilliant to bring that forward because, as you've witnessed through what David, Jennifer have done, not just showcasing what's being made here in North America, but as you've seen them tour overseas, and you'll see more of that, when those manufacturers get ready to enter the marketplace in North America and work with the NAHB and our builders and our architects and our consumers, ICC takes that and says, those are the standards over there. And they work with the companies to make part of the standard that is tried and true in our local municipal code. And that platform allows that to be introduced and reintroduced. It's another chapter. So if you're not in the know, keep following Dave.
Yeah, we're going to go live tomorrow on the mall, Mark. We're going to spend probably an hour walking through and showcasing as many products as we can show for everybody that's not here and can't see it. The smoke's cleared because that's been a nightmare the last couple of days here. That smoke from Canada has been horrible. But we're going to go live on the mall tomorrow, walk through. Marcia Fudge is throwing a house party. Maybe I'll get my interview with her tomorrow. I've been pushing for that, and we're getting closer and having fun. But super exciting stuff. So tune in tomorrow morning, right around 9 a.m. is when we're planning to go live. It'll be a coffee with Dave. We haven't had one in a while.
Coffee with Dave. And this is a visit to the Innovative Product Showcase in DC. When you see this, folks, the backdrop is our nation's capital. The backdrop is our nation's capital.
You got the capital on one end, yeah.
Right. So already the amount of work these groups have gone to educate and to bring this forward, you're going to be hearing about for months to come. And it might take you a year or 2 or 3 years to bring these practices into your projects, but it's coming.
It is coming. And I really want to thank, obviously we can't do this without our supporters, Mark, and the International Code Council, the ICC has brought us down here to tell the story. And in true fashion, didn't tell us what to do or what to say. It's unedited. It's our views, our opinion. We're just going to keep putting it out there, whether you like the builds we see in the mall summit. But the Innovative Housing Summit, it's an amazing thing this year. There's a lot out there. So, but with that, Mark, guess what?
Guess what? So you're bringing your visit to our platform. Is that right?
Well, we are going to go live, so we will be live tomorrow on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Twitch, and we'll have some more. We'll have some more conversation about ESG and sustainability next week on our show. But we have a guest that's on today that is about sustainability. He loves the concept of offsite construction. He lives and breathes what he builds. And I'm excited to have him on. And Jennifer's going to be joining us today. And I'm going to hop back into some of these sessions. So you guys are going to have a great time. But why don't we bring Josh on, Jennifer? And Jennifer, you come on with us as well. But hey, Josh, man,
hey, Dave.
I'm so happy you're joining us. Jennifer, hello.
Hi, everybody.
Yeah. So, Josh, this is a cool place. Did you know there was a National Building Museum?
You know, I'd heard little bits and pieces about this, but it's great to see it in your background and hear your description of it. Would be super, super curious to check that out from a kind of high performance perspective and see what's going on over there. I'd be very curious.
Sounds like a road trip.
You guys want to do a road trip?
I think it'd be a lot of fun.
Hey, well, listen, we're getting better at getting credentials. I actually, because we had to get a press pass for today, I actually got a legitimate press pass to go on the mall as a journalist. I was super excited about it. So
I would have thought the Army would trump that, but press pass is pretty awesome, Dave.
It was pretty awesome. But just so you know, so we're in the central portion of the building museum, and then we're going to get to the show with Josh. But you're all these different levels. There's rooms off on of these, and it really is a history walk through the housing and what's going on. And now we have offsite housing. Looks like it's going to be moving into the space. So maybe I'm thinking this entire section here, we could have cranes and stuff set up for kids to come in and build houses with big Lego crane sets. What do you think?
Let's do it tomorrow.
Awesome. Perfect. All right. Well, listen, you guys, have a great show. Josh, you're in really good hands. I appreciate you coming on. Things got a little twisted this week with my responsibilities here, but I don't know. You guys are going to have a great show, Josh, and I'm super pumped to have you.
Yeah, great to see you, Dave, and have a great time in DC. And I'd like to catch you up afterwards and hear about what you find out.
Awesome. All right, everybody. I'll figure out how. Jen, maybe you can take me out because I'm on my cell phone here. Bye now.
We'll join you. We'll all be there on Saturday for coffee with Dave on the mall. Thank you, Dave. All right, Jennifer, where are you at today?
So I'm holding down the fort back here in Pittsburgh, PA, and don't mind the ruckus in the background. There's a lot going on here as well. And super excited that Dave was able to join us for a few minutes, and even more excited to bring our West Coast friend, Josh Salinger, on.
Cool. I'm really glad to be here, you guys.
So it's so timely, Josh. All of us talk behind the scenes and appreciate the work that you do. But right now, again, when our country and our neighbors experience problems, they're looking for examples of solutions, right? And we're all talking, as the entire media group is talking about, air quality right now. And it's really tough when these fires happen for what happens downstream, right? Besides the point of impact that's so tragic, downstream, it's big. And this is charted ground, right? You're in the Northwest, and years back you've dealt with this. So this was certainly not the reason that we brought you on, but current is current, brother. So welcome.
Yeah, no, it's really apropos. I mean, we are currently building a house that is a fire rebuild that got burnt down back in the fires in 2020. And here on the West Coast, it's just become, smoke season in the summertime. So I've heard it called danger season, because it's just so much hotter, so much smokier. And there was an event here in the West Coast in 2020, I think it was September, where the air quality index got up to 700. So the the chart that you normally see ends at 500, and it got 200 beyond that. So I mean, it was extremely unhealthy. And I remember having to go outside wearing a respirator to just to take out the trash. I mean, it was that bad. And seeing it happen on the East Coast now is so unfortunate. And here on the West Coast, we've had a few more years to kind of deal with this stuff, right? And this is a good segue into one of the things that with high performance construction, which just kind of a quick definition on that, what I consider high performance construction is just a collection of best practices. So if you take a building and you do the best you can with design, you do the best you can with planning, you build the foundation the best way you can, you frame it the best way you can, you ventilate it properly, you make it airtight. You just do all these different things to the best of our ability, which is just best practice, which is what you would think any company would endeavor to do, right? But if you take all these things and you put them together, you end up with this building that we call a high performance building. And oftentimes these buildings need very little energy usage and use very low carbon materials too. And, to this conversation, one of the great things about high performance building is that they do have really high indoor air quality. And this building right behind me, I don't know if I get my other side here, these guys right here, these two little things sticking out right here, actually it's the gray ones right here, are an intake and an exhaust for our ventilation system in these buildings. And they're exhausting the same amount of air as they're bringing in. And it's run through a filter. On this particular house, it's a MERV 15 filter. And anything over, I'll have to check my math on this, but I think it's MERV 11 will take out smoke particles, right? And so, in terms of health and indoor air quality, if you do have these smoke events, to be running your building that's airtight, right? Because we want to keep the outdoor air out and the indoor air that we've created nice in, right? And we want to do that through like an airtight enclosure. But then we want to bring in fresh air and filter it. And that's, filtering out these really nasty PM 2.5 particles that you find with the wildfire smoke. And so it's to make these things survivable. It's resilient. And again, it is just a collection of best practices. We know that if we're going to ventilate a building, that balanced ventilation is the best way that us humans have figured out how to ventilate buildings, right? This is not some crazy rocket ship science or some sort of like crazy passive house thinking. This is simply just best practices. And running your air continuously with balanced pressures through a filter is something that we've been doing at our company for over a decade. And now with all this, stuff that we're hearing about or experiencing with the smoke and wildfires, we're really starting to hear more and more about that indoor air quality. And these buildings are one of the primary solutions to do that.
It's just so important. So best practices is a term you heard Josh use a couple times here. And this is a mainstay year after year of what your clients are looking for because of the education and information that you put out. But those aren't necessarily best practices in the community at large yet, right? This is still foreign terms. So that tight envelope is still a word and a phrase and a practice that is a bit rare. So while you're used to bringing in fresh air, taking out stale air on a controlled, continuous setting, we still have a slew of buildings, right? Both residential and multifamily, and our commercial entities that we congregate in, that they have an unknown amount of leakage, not necessarily by design, just by common practice because it hasn't been instituted. So if you're not familiar with the smooth way that Josh laid out to deliver these results time in and time out, it's a practice to begin identifying what's going on with your building, and that starts by using tools and third-party professionals, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, one of the best practices, best practices are out there whether you know them or not, right? And I agree that the market is kind of unaware of a lot of these best practices. And, one of the things that I'm trying to do with my professional work is just get education out there so that people can become aware of these things, right? So, I do work with FIAS. I teach their builders training certification course, which I highly recommend to architects and builders because it's got a great basis in building science and ventilation and enclosures and different building typologies and zero energy and all that kind of stuff. But also do a bunch of work with Fine Home Building magazine because it's a great platform to be able to take some of these things that we know, like us humans have figured out, and broadcast those to the larger public so that they can become aware of these best practices, right? I think any builder, even those ones that are unaware of this, would say to their clients and even to themselves that they really are trying to build a quality building, right? Otherwise, what are you doing? I mean, otherwise you're just out there knowingly putting out garbage, right? I mean, I suppose there's people that do that, but reasonable humans don't. And, so I think a lot of it is just that people don't know. And I think there's a kind of a lack of education in the trades around this stuff and in the architecture field too. And so, I try to, do a bunch of work on these platforms to get some of this information out there for everybody. And, one of the first things that you can do is just get educated, right? If you're trying to get into this type of building is, take some of these courses, whether it's the FIAS Builders Training course, follow Fine Home Building, Green Building Advisor, Building Science Corporation is a great wealth of knowledge. Our friend Christine Williamson with her Building Science Fight Club has got some really great information out there on Instagram, the Instagram community, the work that you guys are doing, Mark and Jennifer and everything at Dave Cooper Live. So there's a lot of really good stuff out there. And I think we just need to start getting people kind of educated in this stuff.
Well, there you have it, Mark. I feel like we just had a master class in high performance building. I think we could be done right here. I mean, you just revealed so much and made it sound so simple and so easy, Josh.
Well, that's the thing. It's not that it's any more difficult, right? It's just different. And I tell people this a lot. The first time you endeavor upon a zero energy or high performance building, excuse me, it's different, right? And we've learned behaviors our entire lives, and whatever we're doing currently is easy because we've learned those behaviors. And once we're doing something differently, high performance building isn't any more difficult. It's just different. So your first one, you will have a little bit of a learning curve, but after that, it really isn't any different. And I have a great little story about a project that our team went in to kind of bail out a client who was having a hard time with their architect. So we took over the design, but it was a little too late to go back to, we typically do 24-inch on center framing, advanced framing. And this one had just kind of your regular 16-inch on center framing. And during the build, I noticed that our framing hours were going long, and I showed up on the job site and I was trying to figure out why. And the team was like, well, this 16-inch on center framing, we're not used to this. It's taken us longer because we got to think things through and whatever else. And it really illuminated to me that, like, after you've made that adjustment to building to a best practice, it actually became harder to do it the other way, not because it was any more difficult, but because you had to relearn it, right? And I think this is a really great lesson with high performance building or best practices, is that it really isn't any more difficult and really shouldn't take any longer once you just it becomes part of what you do.
That's funny. So people that started at advanced framing, when they go back to try traditional framing, that's advanced because it's a new mechanism. Sure, right? We have a 48 by 96 inch sheet stock, and so there's only so many iterations that can meet that for a fastener schedule. I want to role play for a second because when you were talking, Josh, Jennifer outlined real quickly. Point one: get educated, right? So we're going to role play for a second. My name is Joe Consumer. Okay. And Jennifer is we're going to call her the third party expert. So she understands the certifications and the checklist to make sure that I'm protected. And, you're going to wear any hat you choose, Josh, but I'm Joe Consumer. And I'm interested because I've been following you, but I don't understand you. Okay. because I'm new to all this, but I'm intrigued. And here's where the role playing begins. I'm intrigued by what you continue to deliver with net zero. So, can you tell me, with any of your hats, Joe Consumer, what is net zero?
Yeah, I mean, I think the easiest way to describe net zero is just that over the course of the year, you're able to generate as much electricity through renewables as you consume, so that it zeroes out at the end of the year, right? And one way to do that is to make sure that you don't use as little energy as possible in the first place, so that you have a realistic chance of offsetting that, typically with a solar PV array on your roof, so that it nets out to zero over the course of the year.
So I haven't told you, right? This is what consumers do. They react. I haven't told you that I think my house was what they call a framed house. I think it's from 1970, and I have a this big thing that keeps us hot in the wintertime. I live in the Midwest, and my gas bill's really high though. And in the summertime, I don't really worry because I got this big machine that keeps us cool. So how do I do net zero if I'm, let's actually say I'm not in the Midwest. Let's say I'm in Oregon. How about that? And I'm using those two machines, my heating and cool. Can you talk to me about what I should be learning on that?
Yeah. Well, right. So, I mean, you're obviously talking about retrofits here. And so, the thing about retrofits is that there's no one size fits all solution, right? So what we have to do is we have to show up at your house and we have to kind of take stock of what you got, right? Let's look at your windows. Let's look to see if you have any insulation. Let's maybe do a blower door test and kind of figure out how leaky your house is. And then let's take a look at your furnace and your air conditioning system and just see, are they old? Did you replace them recently? Do they need to be replaced?
They're original to the house.
Okay, yeah.
There's no way I'm changing that filter because I did it once. It was really gross. Single pane windows I know I have, and boy, do they leak. I can't even go to the outside wall. Christmas time, we're in the dining room because the living room's yucky.
Yeah. Well, so it sounds like you've got a lot going on with your house, and what we want to think about when we're thinking about retrofits is don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good, right? So we want to do the best we can, and we want to look for some of those lowest hanging fruit, right? So that we can address those biggest things first. And one of the first questions I'd ask you is, do you have a budget in mind for what you're hoping to do? Because we will craft a solution that will get you as many of these good things, these low hanging fruit as possible that fits within the budget that's comfortable for you. Right.
I love that, Josh. I mean, that is, that does go hand in hand with what can be achieved. It's first identifying what problem are you trying to solve? What do you want once it's fixed? Do you want those lower energy bills, or do you want, a safer place for your kids to be crawling on the floor? Like, what is your goal? What's most important for the client and the people occupying the homes in the building? And again, it goes back to that get educated piece. And I think the consumers are definitely interested in getting more educated. And I think they're demanding more of their builders. For a very long time, it was, I want those hardwood floors and those granite countertops. But now when we had to wear the masks because of COVID, and now we need to wear masks because of the outdoor air quality. I mean, this is a new world. Yeah. And I don't want to jump ahead to the comments, but I do think it's incredibly relevant because let me just look for it here. Tim Sims had a terrific comment. He's in Washington, D.C. with everybody, with Dave and everybody today. Hello from D.C. IAQ, or indoor air quality, is an underrated topic that thankfully is growing in acceptance. Timely for this week, but hope the awareness level stays high. Wildfires are ideal time to document and publish.
Yeah. So Jennifer, if I could butt in, you said a couple things. Like, people talk about the wood floors and the countertops and all this stuff. Those are amenities that people want, right? People are starting to ask for additional amenities now, which is indoor air quality, right?
Exactly.
Comfort and things that go back to those best practices of building. And that's why builders are hearing more about this stuff, because the general public whether it's due to wildfires or coronaviruses or whatever it might be, or they've been to Europe and been inside a house that's quiet and comfortable or whatever it is, they're starting to understand that there's amenities beyond just the finishes that go into a house, right? And that's what these buildings are, just by nature, are providing additional amenities. So I think that's an interesting way to talk about it.
Absolutely. And Mark, I think just going back to your point about, the retrofit and point number one, which is get educated. I think, builders need to educate the builders need to educate consumers need to ask, because I think where you were going with that, Mark, is consumers don't really know always how to articulate the question.
I think so. Everyone out there that knows us, we did the role playing as a surprise. This is Josh didn't know it was coming. It came up organically. Funny word. But how Josh answered it is a learning lesson for everyone. He put himself in the mindset of, I was a consumer. He only knew what I told him at the time. And he didn't say, oh, by the way, we're building a new house down the street and bringing in these panels and it's really awesome and you won't have that problem. He met my situation where I was at and he said, let's look at your house more. Let's see what's going on. Let's see your budget and retrofit. He did that automatically, unscripted, automatic. And then it segued, because Jennifer is omnipresent with what's going on with Tim in DC. And we brought in that example that brought us so fast with the pandemic of the indoor air quality from outside sources, right? And then also from the wildfire. Two big things that have allowed for passive house and whatnot to really be on the uptake. But Jennifer recognized that the market is still saying hardwood floors and countertops. And I will tell you, from an interior portion of spaces, indoor air quality is a whole other conundrum. Right there, she identified two hard surfaces. And in most cases, those hard surfaces are not emitting. But if you bring in a carpet that maybe is not wool-based, you have a different air quality going on. If you bringing in cabinets that have added urea formaldehyde and a wicked paint system, you don't want them in your dwelling, because now that this dwelling is our fresh air machine, our house is our fresh air machine, if you put pollutants in there, you are now the contributor. If you buy 10 pairs of shoes from Goofy Shoe Store, those shoes are off-gassing inside of your house. That simple example we give people, when you buy a new car or your aunt buys a new car and you sit in it and you go, that new car smell. Well, that new car smell is off-gassing. And your house has a lot of new materials off-gassing. So some are healthy, some are not. So if we don't know what we're putting in, that's a little scary.
Well, that's the source control, right? We want to primarily make sure that we're building with things and putting things in our house that don't contribute to that in the first place, because we spend over 90% of our times on average indoors. And it's not something that the EPA regulates, is the air quality indoors. And oftentimes it's much higher than the allowable levels of pollutants on the inside of our buildings than it is allowed on the outside of the building, regulated through the EPA. And so, we want to make sure that we're providing this ventilation, like I talked about, and filtration and all that. But if you're starting with something that is constantly emitting, what good is that going to do? And back to Jennifer's thing, like this is an amenity that I know people are calling and asking for. We're seeing people, calling and asking about this. And interesting, with our company, we switched to, we used to do, say, a dormer, an addition, or something like that, like a regular dormer addition for the sake of it. But a few years back, we made a commitment to only do retrofits that electrify homes and also make them more resilient, more comfortable, healthier, durable, all these things, right? And so when someone calls us and says, hey, I want to do a kitchen remodel or I want to do an addition, we say, okay, are you also interested in replacing your furnace with a heat pump and adding a ventilation system to your house? And we thought that when we started doing that people would just be like, whoa, and they would hang up the phone right away. But surprisingly, more than half, easily more than half, have been like, wow, I've been wanting to do that for a while, and I guess I didn't really realize that I could do that. Let's talk. And we were just floored. We're like, have we just not been asking the question long enough to our clients, right? And we've been doing great ever since kind of putting that, flag in the sand and just saying, hey, like, we're not going to do a renovation on your house unless you also decarbonize this thing and deal with the source control and the health and the resiliency and all these good things. And we're getting really positive feedback on that. That was a surprise to us.
That's amazing. And if we think about point number one being get educated, it feels like point number two might be make smart choices, because in this world it is hard to have everything, right? I do want it all, right? I want the perfect house, I want the beautiful car, I want my kids in college, I want to pay for all of that. But at the end of the day, it does become a budget question. So as you're weighing the pros and cons of what is important, it feels like, Josh, you're also a guide. You're not just a designer, you're not just a builder, but you're truly a guide helping people make smart choices.
Yeah, I mean, usually the role playing thing was interesting because Mark came at it from like, hey, I'm interested in zero energy. And that's not the client we get every time. Some people call and say, hey, I'm interested in return on investment, or I'm interested in aesthetics, or I'm interested in health because my son has allergies, or I'm interested. There's all these different avatars that might call, right? And we need to be able to take their thing, right? And in your role playing thing, Mark, it happened to be zero energy. So I just played off of that because that's what you started with. But oftentimes it'll start with, hey, I've got environmental sensitivities. And lo and behold, this type of building, sorry, I'm reverse, this type of building solves those problems, right? And so you can have the checkbook Republican call you up, or you can have the flying liberal or whatever it is, and like they can all be answered with this type of building. It really doesn't matter. You have to be able to play to the things that are important to them, and we can lead them to the solution that happens to be solved through best practices in building.
That's what's interesting, is you bring it towards what ends up being best for them, but your team has the experience and success to say, and by the way, this is our minimum threshold. We know that we need to define what this building's doing, that it will be electric, it will have fresh air, and it will be controlled so that we can deliver those results. That's an inherent change for that consumer. Because you might have someone say, I need 3 deep freezers. That's what I need, right? Because they make a lot of mango smoothies, right? Okay, fantastic. Well, we need to accommodate them for that energy. And guess what? Sunshine over there is sitting over our shoulder, and we're going to be able to make those freezers clicking cold for you.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Yeah. You got to find the thing that's important.
I'm
to the
also
client.
laughing in my head because when you talked about the role playing, you're like, Mark, people come to us first for ROI and that kind of stuff. And it's funny, the people that we know in our industry are all approached by something different. Like, I've never had an ROI question. Like, it's hilarious. And hopefully I never do. But but zero, I get all the time. And of course, my answer is different. All of ours are different, but it's fun. That's what role playing is kind of neat, because we get to play off of what we're used to, and you get to respond by all these incredible strengths that are tried and true in your practice.
Yeah. And, I think when you're working with a client like that, you don't need to, unless they're asking, get into like, oh, well, where's our primary air control layer? Where's the vapor control layer? Is this a class 2 vapor retarder? I mean, you can lose people really quick, and you really got to play to what is speaking to them, but you also have to know your stuff, right? So you have to be able to like have that background and know what it is you're talking about so that you can apply it to the situation from the perspective that helps that client the most.
Jennifer, can you read my mind?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm going in a slightly different direction though, Mark. So let's hear what you have to say first.
Well, just says know your stuff. And You do a great job of informing the world through different mediums, Josh. But give people that tip of where they can go, whether they're professional or consumer, to learn their stuff.
So I love that, Mark, because that is exactly where I was going
Oh, really?
to go. And I was going to flash this comment from Christopher. Chris, great to see you. Thanks for joining us today. Josh has such a way with teaching. And I totally agree, because you have this normal speech pattern, like a normal person. You're not using jargon and all of these different things. You're talking as if the consumer is ready, willing, and able to listen. So, Mark, to your point, why don't we ask Josh how he's able to speak with such authority? Tell us about what you're doing at Birdsmith and where all of this amazing knowledge came from.
Oh gosh. I think the reason I got into this, and there's a number of reasons, but the one that pops into mind right away is that when I got into building and design, I always wanted to figure out the why behind why people were, or a decision someone made. And a great example is like asphalt paper, right, or felt paper that you find behind siding or under roofing and stuff. And I used to ask, like, well, what's the purpose of this stuff? I mean, ostensibly, it seemed like it was to keep water out. But you talk to different people, you get different answers, and eventually you kind of get to, well, we've always done it this way, or the 30-year thing, we've done it this way for 30 years. But I'm like, well, why can't anyone tell me why we're using asphalt impregnated felt paper for these things? Is it because it keeps moisture out, or is it because bulk water out, or is it something else? And I could never really find the answer until I really discovered passive building and building science. And I was at I think Joe Stieberg, everything always kind of goes back to him, one of his talks. And it turns out the reason that asphalt paper was originally used and its main purpose is a wind tight layer, because people used to just put siding over their framing and the wind would just howl through it. And so they put up this felt paper to stop the wind from coming into their house because it was uncomfortable. It was like the very first kind of air barrier. And I was like, oh, thank you for, like letting me know that. Right. And so I guess I just had a curiosity, and it wasn't just the building paper. It was everything. Like, why are we using concrete in our slabs? What's it doing? Like, what's the point here? I mean, if it doesn't have a structural element, and if it doesn't have what's it for? Why are we, and so, and I didn't always get sufficient answers from the local trade base and the people around me and stuff like that until I kind of plugged into this community. Then I started really discovering that stuff. And then I just kind of dove deep from there, and then applied that to the work we were doing at our company. And once you learn how to do something right, you can't not do it right anymore. Yeah. I mean, it's just like, what are you going to do? Like throw a bunch of OSB up really poorly and walk away? Yeah. I mean, it would just feel wrong,
I love that. Yeah. And Josh, you probably remember, when we had the good fortune to be in the headquarters of SIGA North America, and they did this amazing,
Switzerland.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And they did this, amazing drawing of insulation, how you get dressed, basically. How you dress a house is so much like getting ready for an outdoor adventure, whether that's skiing or snowboarding or winter trail running, whatever that might be. And the first time you hit the slopes and it's cold out and you don't dress appropriately, chances are you're never going to do that again. Chances
if you're
are
just wearing a sweater, a wool sweater, and you're going downhill on the slopes, you're going to be cold, right?
Exactly.
So Gore-Tex wind tight layer over it. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's so many similarities between your base layer, your mid layer, your shell, all of that. The exact way you get dressed for outdoor adventures is how you think about your house.
Yep. It's so funny when, Josh, you're recovering the information for the how and the why. I go to the moment that I missed out. So early days of siding, right? Guy pulls up in a pickup truck, unload that. Okay, right? Great. Unload that. 10 minutes later, he's like, I got to go. Put that on the wall before I get back. So there was no how. There was no why. It was a couple rolls of felt, right? And you put it on the wall, and it better be done before he comes back because he's bringing the siding.
Hmm.
I'm sure I put it up wrong.
Yeah. Well, I
I'm
mean,
sure
that's
I
not
was
your.
told how to put layer it at least, but I was never told how or why at all.
It, our industry, for some reason, I can't think of like, what if dentists were like this, right? Like you showed up and, the dentist left you with the hygienist and said, hey, I'm going to be back in a half an hour and I want you to get that cavity filled, no way. But, in construction, it's just how it's done, right? And for some reason, we don't value that education in our industry for really basic stuff. I mean, a lot of the stuff that I tend to talk about is high school level physics. I mean, it's just kind of like things go from high to low. There's gravity, I mean, it's pretty simple stuff. There's just no mechanism in our industry for that education. And I don't know why that is. Jennifer, when we were in Switzerland, we visited a trade school. And they have these two different paths that you can take. You can kind of take the trades route or the white collar route, whatever it is. But you went in there and those kids were learning everything from like the forest where the tree came from and how they felled it and like how to saw the logs to like how to operate machinery to how to do this joinery, the building science behind it. And it was like a 4-year program. They were, getting educated all the way up to like calculus and beyond. So their general education was also getting delivered to them. And then they were guaranteed a minimum, I think it was like, I want to say 65,000 Swiss francs
Right.
guaranteed out of
Which is
school.
a lot of money.
And they never got paid that much because they always got paid more, apparently,
Exactly.
coming right out of school.
More.
But yeah, and so they had all this education and it made for a better building environment and a better culture, right? And so this is just a cultural thing. For some reason in North America, we don't put that value into this education for our buildings, even though we demand a lot out of them, right? Our clients want, when the smoke's out, they're like, hey, I don't want the smoke, right? When it's not comfortable, they want to be comfortable. So there's a disconnect here, and they had solved that in Switzerland, right? It was like it was just cultural. They'd always done it that way. They appreciated their buildings.
Well, there was respect. There was a definitive amount of respect for the trades and the skills competition. I mean, they wear it as a badge of honor. And Dave and I are very excited to get back over there this summer and really explore that culture and explore where the origin story of that. It's interesting. It happened this week. We're showing pictures of New York City skyline, which is a very familiar picture, especially here in our household. We've seen it, thousands of times. And I showed that picture to my 7-year-old and he said, why is the sky orange? And like, how can we change that? And I said, go get your list. Remember Earth Day wasn't that long ago. Do you remember the list you made in your first grade class? Let's look at that list again. This is how you can change that orange sky. Don't just look at this list on Earth Day, look at it every day. And he said, oh, that's so easy. I can do that at 7. So when you think about building culture and you think about where did that level of respect come from, it comes from a very young age, between the teachers in school, the parents, the peer group, the older siblings, people leading by example. And when you couple that with, outside influences, and maybe you guys are familiar with Simon Sinek, who, he has this whole thing, start with why. I mean, it's not hard. It's really not hard to start with the why.
Yeah, it's a great way to frame it for sure. And like what I have a couple of kids here in my house, an 11-year-old and a 14-year-old, and I know they're going to be dealing with climate change and these smoke events and all this stuff more and more frequently in their lives. And, here we are on this show talking about buildings, and buildings account for 38% of the greenhouse gas emissions in the United States. So if you want to make an impact and you want to do something about that gray New York, or sort of the orange New York skyline, well, buildings have a big role to play, right? And what a win-win-win situation. Like be, proactive and advocate, and do something, get action involved. But we're also creating things that are healthier, beautiful, comfortable, resilient. Like, there's just win all around. Right.
Absolutely. And even with Bird's Mouth, and the work that you're doing, we've talked a lot about the triple bottom line on this show, the people, the environment, profitability. You can bring those things together. You can bring those three things together to create that win-win-win. So, Mark, I feel like we could have a round 2 with this conversation.
I want to have a round 2. Like, Jennifer knows this, Josh. I always give my analogies of health with buildings and materials to food. And the one that just came up fresh that I don't think I used before is when we talk about food, someone will always say, well, sugar, right, in that food, like that's unhealthy. Like let's have a good breakfast. Let's not have sugar, right? So we understand unhealthy right away is a major trigger in both how we do movies and media and commercials. That's standard. But when you say unhealthy in construction, that's not necessarily, oh, well, it's a candy bar, it's okay. Unhealthy in construction is like a lifetime of potential real problems. Like we know it's not okay. And it might be a little bit too big to take on altogether. But those little steps, like we started today, of get educated, those little steps that we shared about know your stuff, I think Josh said was another one. Jennifer kept a good track. Those are little good steps, and we've always wanted to come around to tips. Today we did tips, and it wasn't part of the plan. Josh is a great resource. We all know and like him in the industry. So if you're out that way, you can find him. But guess what? You don't have to be out that way. He'll find you and he'll meet you online. Follow what they do. Tell your channel. Share what you got, Josh.
Yeah, Bird's Mouth PDX is our Instagram account, so I post there often. Our website, which Jennifer's got up here, is birdsmouthpdx.com. This is an example of 11 zero-energy homes that were panelized, offsite build, that we built on 1.25 acres here in Northeast Portland. Yeah, I'll write the occasional article for Fine Home Building Magazine, or I'll write for Green Building Advisor. I'm an expert member there, so I'm often doing stuff there. I teach a course called the Sustainable Homes Professional course, which is through Earth Advantage. And that's a certification course that used to be a 6-month in-person course that's now gone online and is available nationally and touches on all aspects of best practices in building. So I also teach with the FIAS Builders Training course. I do that. I try to get out there as much as possible. I'm trying to spread the word and do my part. I often say, like, I can only do so much building 3 to 5 zero-energy homes in Portland, Oregon per year. But if I can get it out there and actually make an impact, then that's how I can make that impact.
I got a fun one for you, Jennifer. We did the role play of me pretending to be someone. But a lot of times people don't know how we are in our professional lives. So all of us get to hang out at conferences, right? We're there at IBS and whatnot. During the FIAS conference this year, it was one of the early times when everyone got to come back together. And so you have brief engagements with people, and you don't always have a time to learn their professional side. And yes, you follow them online, and at least I hope that you aspire to follow more people online. But in the real life, after a week of busy FIAS, Josh and I got to just walk over the final night. 2 guys, clearly the best dressed in the whole place, right? Wearing our trucker caps. And we just got to walk over, bump elbows and said, "Hey man, how you doing?" I knew he sacrificed a week of working with his team to get educated and to meet with his peers and do all that. We didn't have that conversation. We just said, "Hey, man, how you doing?" And we looked around the room and we did some people watching, and you know, talked about who we give high fives to and who we were going to meet next time and what we're going to do. All that happens. But as much as we do the role playing to help, this is a point to everyone: sit back and enjoy the moment with each other, and just acknowledge that we need to take those breaks. We need to come together, and then when we go back to our local areas, we need to share what each person's doing. We need to bring that forward. And Josh did that for us today. And thanks for being on your heels to do that today. And for all the people in the audience, we didn't get to all your comments, but I'm going to read them later because I love going on LinkedIn on Saturday morning when my eyes are tired.
I do want to flash a couple of them because, Andrew Seeley, always good to see you, and good to see this show from DC to Pacific Northwest with Josh. Absolutely. And all the way to the UK, right? With Adam White chiming in and saying, "Hey, y'all," which I love. We knew that Chris was joining in saying, "Lovely people." Mac Nori, we had him tuning in saying offsite and International Code Council and innovations of today and tomorrow, 100%, which is awesome. And Mark, this guy.
Peter Molinar is holding it down in Ontario. The man has everything covered. I don't think he's missed a Passive House accelerator show or a shop class show. So build it tight, ventilate it right. That's a great tagline. I think what is Sega's, Josh? Build it right, build it tight, get it right. That's their version.
Yeah.
Technically, build it tight, ventilate right, I believe is trademarked by Owens Corning. I think I found that.
Huh.
Although the entire industry uses it, but whoever officially started it, we would love to give you credit. I believe it's Owens Corning. Peter Molinar, thank you for being you, brother.
Perfect. And we have Jake Carter saying consumers should be demanding more, and also made a really terrific point. The trades aren't respected like other professions in the U.S. Part of the issue in the trades shortage. And I know, starting here on this show, we're trying hard to change that. And I know Mark and Josh, you are as well.
I saw a picture. Josh, you might know who did this. They did it on Instagram. I think it was Matt Bangswood. There was a huge facade, and they painted on it, ChatGPT, can you do this? Right? And that's certainly no shot against the AI world. I love the AI world, but like it's brilliant, right? It made a point. That's what marketing does. If you didn't catch your eye, it caught your eye. It's that upside down old style sign, and it worked. So, yeah, to some networks, the building trades doesn't get that electro thing, and if
that'll be changing though.
It
can make really good money right now. I mean, try hiring a carpenter one of these days and see what they're charging. I mean, it's you can make a really good living doing some really cool, meaningful
stuff. And
the
business world talks about supply and demand, right? Well, those philosophies that are tried and true are going to come back to give everyone a teaching in another way, right? Because supply and demand is actually going to cause the curve of a lot of those things. And quite honestly, we do usually, I think everyone does a good job of tipping when they order pizza or when they order tacos, whatever they get. Consider tipping the person that puts the roof over the house and makes your gas leave your house. My gosh, if they're not the best people in the world, like every plumber, every electrician, every person that puts together that fresh air machine and reminds you what you need to hear, how important that filter is, like clockwork, give them a tip back and buy them lunch. I mean, good God, that lunch is privileged.
They love that. Yeah, it goes a long way.
Yeah, it definitely does. And I think just to, sum this up, Josh, I mean, point number one today was so valiant and just so on point. It's all about get educated. And, not that this is a shameless plug, but I do want to put it up here. The building science symposiums are working their way around the country. And there's one coming up, in the very near future, happening pretty much in our, northeastern corridor, in Stratford, Connecticut. And you find the best resources here. And Mark, to your point, you find the best people here who are just up for a good chat. So it's not just about the presentations and the topics that are formally being discussed. It's about those dialogues that do happen over a beer or two, maybe.
Yeah.
About, the building science behind all of this in a really fun, easy to understand format.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. Some really great minds there. So go to that, check those things out if you can, and talk to those folks. They know what they're talking about. They're a lot of fun.
Yeah, you don't get to hang out with 100 people and hear from Coda, like, right?
Right.
Coda is a very special person. Building Science Corp is the reason companies and professionals today are in good standings because of the work they did 30 years ago, is why all these careers are here for us today. And Coda quietly is like 1,500 IBM computer processors at once. And he happens to present really well. So if you could be in a room with 120 people and hear him for 2 hours, let alone the other presenters, right? I'm just targeting one. Everyone knows we know the other ones really well too. And tomorrow morning, Jennifer, Josh, and the rest of you, when you have coffee, you can also have coffee with Dave because he is on the White House lawn.
With the speaking
of lawn, I'm not sure if you can hear it in my background, but I have a massive lawnmower right here next to me. But thank you for that, Mark. And thank you, Josh, for joining us today. And everybody, remember, you can follow Josh. You can find him pretty much everywhere. You're everywhere, Josh. Your video, audio, written media. So thank you for bringing your story and your talent and your wisdom and Bird's Mouth to the forefront of BS Friday. And as always, everybody, thank you to the community tuning in. Be sure to tune in tomorrow, as Dave will be broadcasting live from the White House lawn, or the National Mall, I should say, the Innovative Housing Showcase, and that'll be a lot of fun.
Y'all have a great Friday. Thank you, Josh.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. Great conversation.
Awesome. Bye now.
Bye.